doubt, and I mean, I'm very much not a great believer in the mind doing the thinking anyway. I very much think we think with our bodies. But for me, I think skepticism is something that we learn and we copy and like almost mutate from people, and doubt is something that we're born with because it's almost a gut reaction to something, but we turn it into a doubt as we get older. Like, there's no real skepticism in children. Do you know what I mean? Like like when you meet a real pure soul, like they don't really have skepticism, but they'll have doubt. But it's almost always other people I've spoken to a body feeling, and especially with children, like they'll, you know, if there's a cliff, they're kind of doubting their ability to jump rather than what's going to happen when they hit the bottom. But they're not skeptical, like, is this real or not? Like, I think it's a learned process through the body rather than through the mind, if that makes any sense.
That makes sense, yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, like I'm probably, people would say I'm very skeptical, but I'm not. I don't think I am. It's a body doubt. I doubt myself, I doubt other people, I doubt concepts, I doubt everything around me, but it's not a skepticism, it's just a acceptance, almost, that I don't think we're all sat here now, I don't really think anything's real anymore, which is kind of beautiful when I'm in this point, but I'm not skeptical about it because my body right now is telling me that, you know. So, kind of makes sense.
Jen, you said you think with your body.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that, because that's really interesting?
Yeah, so I don't have inner voice at all. 1/3 of people, they think they don't have an inner monologue. So all thought goes through the body, so, you know, if I'm scared, if I'm worried, if I'm doubtful, stress, happiness, elation, it all is a body feeling. So maybe that's why I don't understand skepticism, because I can't think, like, is this person bullshitting me? Instead it shows up in the body as like a butterfly in my stomach, like something's not right here. So to me it feels like doubt. So maybe it's a me thing actually,
Okay.
and not a whole thing.
Uh-huh.
But I do think skepticism is learned, because you don't find a child being, well, usually, like when they're really young, you know, they can doubt things, but then very rarely, I think it's a concept that we take on.
Yeah.
And it mutates the older we get, that we become more and more skeptical.
Yeah.
Because it's,
I think children quite often feel things, and the parent or the authority figure say, well, what do you mean?
yeah.
What do you mean? Well, I don't know what I mean, but I know what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
Yeah, but tell me what you mean.
Yeah. And we stop doing that as we get older. Like, I always think instead of saying to people like, oh, what are you thinking? We should always say, like, what are you feeling?
Yeah.
What feeling have you got? Rather
Yeah,
than,
yeah.
why are you skeptical? Like, what's the feeling in your body? And that will tell you how you're
Yeah,
feeling.
yeah,
Rather than, I mean, I don't understand how you have something in your mind, so it's easy for me to say, you know. But like, if someone's got stressful thoughts, I always find if you say to them what's going on in the body, they can quiet the mind.
So what's your creative process? Do you have ideas?
No, I have feelings.
You have feelings,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Like, it's, I guess the world's quite internal for me. It's quite, I can go from being like really elated to really quite down in a flash, depending on what's around me or what I can sense.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's all I know.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like, with the other people I meet who are not inner thought people, we're all quite the same. Like, I mean, I think I'm quite flighty, most of them are quite grounded.
Do you think you're quite flighty?
Yeah, I feel I'm quite flighty. But, like, yeah, I think it's quite, I feel it's quite, like, we just feel the world differently. We can still overthink things in the way that my body overthinks things. I'll feel stressed when I leave a certain situation and I have to take a while to process it out. But I can't really think about why I feel stressed. So it's a complete, like, get rid of this feeling out of the body. Or like having to ask other people what regular people think.
So do you have a reflective process that when you when you go to bed at night, where you kind of look back on the day? No.
No, I'll have a body feeling, like, if I've been, well, probably after this, like if I've spoken out in front of people, before I go to bed I'll normally feel quite anxious, my heart will beat quickly, and I need to process that out with like breath, and I'll calm down again. Or like look at my hamster, and that'll calm me down. But yeah, it's a different process, I guess.
What would you say is the because if you're living in a thought-based world, right? Is that what makes it difficult, or is there any difficult, because is there a kind of negative to that because of that, and it creates a kind of doubt just because you think maybe something's missing or they've got an advantage? Is there stuff like that goes on?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Like, because people can think things through before they do it, before they say it. Like, people tell me their inner voice will say something before they say it, whereas I will just speak. And then afterwards I might feel panicked, like, what the hell did I just say? Because I can't recall what I've said either, but I'll have a body feeling of either like bliss, stress, or like quite often I'll say to Bob, like, did I say anything ridiculous? Because it just comes out.
But then loads of people say that anyway, even though they don't know things like, what did I just say, or the discomfort of, I mean, it sounds like a similar response in a way, but maybe there's more or less knowing, like less certainty around. I don't know, but
I used to think it was a negative, but I'm starting to think now that it's more of a positive because I can connect to people quicker. Like, I completely believe in like energies and like, that it's our nervous systems that connect. Like I said, I don't think the brain does our thinking. I think our brain is everywhere around us. It's not the brain.
Or like the Rupert Sheldrake stuff.
Yeah. And I used to hate it because if someone was telling me how happy they were, I could feel that they were actually really sad. And I'd be like, well, why do you feel sad? And then they'd end up crying, and I'd be like, whoa. But now that I'm learning to understand that if you can connect through like nervous systems and through what your gut's telling you, it might be a benefit if you just learn how to use it rather than always asking people what their thoughts are.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm just sitting there getting a picture of kind of the way you process stuff, just that it comes in the body, and yet this, the idea of skepticism, right, that occurs at the level of the mind as a result. I think people that think have a second layer of processing, right? You just get one in your body, but we have this second layer, and actually, like you said, you think your way might be an advantage, and I get that because the thing about this mind processing is it can talk you out of actually what's really true, right? Something picks up in your body, but your mind might develop a storyline, from conditioning or whatever, but it can, and you end up with this disparity between the story that your mind tells you, it rationalises and it's able to go, okay, well it's this and this, and it talks you out of the feelings in your body. And that skepticism, I think, is a result of continued experience in life that's out of alignment with actually how your body's receiving it, right? Eventually, the disparity between what your mind tells you and what your body's feeling, I think,
Well, that's a repression, isn't it? So your parents have said, no, you feel really bad or whatever, and you start internalising the wrong responses. Yeah. So you don't listen to that. You're not even aware of it. You don't even know how to name it, or so then you end up in relationships or friendships with people who are maybe, in the case of like abusive or whatever, without recognising as such, because like you say, the mind is saying, wow, this person is amazing, but your body's going, I'm scared, run, like, so you can't access.
And the mind can kind of develop into this kind of thing that just constantly, just seemingly helps you adjust to the established status quo of kind of maybe how it might be on the outside, or to fit in, or whatever it is. But actually all the time it's talking you out of that connection, out of that truth that your body's picking up.
Yeah.
Eventually to the point where you probably just override the feelings in your body. Now you're living in your mind and you're dead from the neck down, right? Because the disparity is such that actually the mind's going, okay, well, we'll just switch off those sensors there, and it's just, you ignore it as a matter of course the moment it even occurs in the body, to the point where you probably don't even feel it anymore.
Yeah, apart from, most people can access anger as well, even though kind of dead in the body.
Right.
Whereas I suppose like doormats is usually the one thing they can't access, because that's where the courage comes from, that's where growth comes from, I think, a lot in that case, but anger seems to be the go-to of anyone who's just like kind of desiccated human being. Like it's usually they can still access that unless they're like really, really cut off. You're just totally dissociated or something. But
Yeah.
because unconditional love, it isn't an emotion and it's not a feeling. Like it can have a feeling, like, but it is just the absence of that boundary, and that intimacy isn't, like you said the last time, like it's not personal. It's not to do with personal feeling or personal connection, but it makes that possible with everything, because it's not that one thing's connecting with another. It's just connection. In a sense it is, but
I think as well when like everybody reaches, I feel like everyone reaches a bliss point, like people who've had NDEs or people like when they're actively dying, like not so much if it's like a traumatic sudden death, like 'cause then it'll only be a minute long, but like when they're actively dying, like before like the brain is released, you know, they talk about feeling unconditional love and feeling connected and feeling they don't care anymore about skepticism, or there's always, well not always, a lot of end of life nurses say like in the last few hours people always say nothing mattered this whole time, nothing, and it's a sense of how I experience bliss point when I've seen a patient actively dying. It's the same feeling, it's just they have that like that release, the body, the muscles relax, and they're like, and it's almost like we all have access to it, whether it's the mind or the body that's dead or whatever it is, but it takes, something is released in those last like days, hours, months sometimes, that just brings people into bliss point, and everyone has the...
That's very beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's life changing when you see that, but it's interesting to me that it's accessible to everyone.
But some people fight to the end as well. I don't know if you know any of the stats on that, because...
Yeah, but then even like the DMT, when it's released, like that moment must be... Can't speak to them then, but like...
Oh yeah, I suppose you wouldn't know what they're...
You wouldn't know at that point, because that's when they're like...
What's DMT?
Brainstem dead. It's not DMT, is it? What's it called?
It is DMT,
DMT.
Yeah.
There's a small amount in your brain, like minutes before you die, seconds it releases. So they say. And
apparently you get a hit when you're born. It lives in the body. You get a hit when you're born, and apparently you get a hit when you die.
So, yeah.
Like the DMT you take to experience like other dimensions, and
they call
like
it God molecule, don't they?
Yeah, and it's part of, like if you take ayahuasca, DMT's part of that, but then there's the plant or whatever to slow down the process of it. So it's like a 20-minute trip where people tend to experience like alien beings. And
is that the pineal gland release that or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Some people fight right until the end, but then that moment when they clinically die, the body's still awake for a few seconds when the DMT's, so we can't ask them if they had that piece then.
except that maybe the ND, you know, the ones that...
The NDs, yeah.
So, I'm like, okay, death's a process, but they've gone into... If there's fear-based death, then it seems to be, I don't know, from Yvonne Kaysen, like talking about people who had negative NDEs seem to have a lot more fear of resisting the light or not wanting to leave or not wanting to die. So maybe it's not really a let go in those cases. I mean, but it's got to be most cases, because that's something like 17% are negative, which is actually quite high. But it apparently initially there's usually a void experience that's not necessarily pleasant anyway, so after that it seems like you go through that and then the light will come or whatever, but it's part of the process. So maybe just initially if you fight it, then it's negative, you haven't allowed it to continue.
Maybe that's it, when it's more of a natural transition, like whether it's through a terminal illness, natural death, or an addiction or whatever it is, but if you know it's happening, maybe it's then that, you know, when it's more natural for the body.
Oh, when you know you're dying?
Maybe that's when it's more...
Because it can be confusing if you are dead and don't realise you're dead, in, well, you know, dead in the NDE sense, and...
Or you're not ready yet, you know?
Yeah, right enough. Clinging, because there is a negotiation, isn't there, like Peter Fennig talking about, I don't know if you watched him and the psychiatrist. I find that quite interesting. Is you can say I want to die on Tuesday because whoever is coming to see me, and yeah, it's interesting.
Mm.
And but some people come back identified. It's interesting as well, so it doesn't necessarily blow identification or come back religious, so it doesn't, an awakening doesn't necessarily blow that out of the water. It generally does, but someone can come back after full-blown awakening to being a Krishna or being a Christian. In some sense, there's some kind of belief that's sustained.
And that's the interesting thing that I found as well, like when people are actively dying, like in those last few hours, more often than not, everything is released so much that even if they've been of a super strict religion, they're kind of almost laughing like it doesn't matter. Like it's safer, it's fine. Like it's really quite life-changing. Like obviously it's not going to be everyone, but yeah.
Yeah, they always make positive life changes afterwards. I mean, that's the research on it is just massive, isn't it? They don't care about material stuff, although they want houses. Apparently they want houses, and it's just, but they seem really free of that. Maybe more so than just the non-dual. Like, I don't know. Be interesting to compare in a way. Like, it's another research project
Yeah.
for someone.
I'll get to it.
Sort of, yeah, there's not a lot. I don't know, but it's interesting, isn't it? So because financial worries and stuff like that like it doesn't make any sense in a way. Like there's no one here like who's there to give a rat's about where you live but you can, if you go to the mind for the moment that you're kind of taking it seriously. No one's taking it seriously. Like it's big. The cortisol's in the body. Like in a bad situation, it just is. The body is just telling you this feels unsafe. I mean. But I should say initially after I mean, even in a situation where someone is being really, really unfair to you, like I did experience that, and I didn't care about that. I wouldn't have seen it as unfairness or whatever. I mean, just the bliss is so thick that nothing feels bad, like nothing. So you can reflect on it and think, oh, I had the best summer of my life after I woke up. But if you look at the actual facts of it, it's like, oh my God, another person could be just like weeping. It's a crazy contradiction because it is our internal state, isn't it? Like all the time, like what we make of anything. I can understand why a lot of people leave their lives and their homes and their families and just go as well. Because there's that glue in a sense is gone, or that non-attachment is there, and when it's new it's like there can also be that like you're woken up to a life that makes no sense anymore. Like it just doesn't. None of it is like, why am I doing this? Why am I,
Yeah, it's kind of like Michael Douglas in Falling Down or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Where he just gets out of the car and just says, I mean, he's stuck on the freeway and acres and acres of traffic, and just gets out of the car and just says, yeah, I'm going home, and just walks off and leaves his car there.
It's very cathartic.
And that's it, right? That's the moment of awakening right there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think it doesn't go well for him in the end, does it? Or not?
I don't think it does. And there's a lot of like, I don't know, like in our training we call it truth without love. Like he's so blunt with people. I don't know, like does he go into McDonald's and he's so cruel, like he's brutal, but he doesn't give a fuck, and it's so cathartic to watch that because, but yeah, it's just the truth is coming out, isn't it? There's nothing to inhibit it, and there's no concern about consequences.
Yeah.
It's in that moment it's just. You just want to be like that.
Yeah, I remember there was a part of me that could relate to it. I related to half of it, and then kind of it just went a bit too far, didn't it?
Yeah.
I guess kind of Fight Club as well had a similar effect on me as well. Right, that played out me and my internal struggle, and me and the self that I wanted to be, and actually, wow.
And the things about possessions owning you, but then like that can be true after awakening as well. Things grow up around you, and it's like you need it. Like Jung says, you need either internal disaster or a catastrophe, some kind of catastrophe to change something, or it could be love. That could be the catastrophe, or but there has to be something.
Yeah,
because we're just easily chained, aren't we? Like we just. But initially, I think after this, there is a period of time where you could just walk like with, maybe a small bag of your back, but that's it. Like I don't know, because you could live on the street.
Yeah.
You could just. I don't know how common that is, but I imagine it is very common because. And that can create, you could put yourself in a really bad situation doing that as well and regret it later. That's a thing, because I thought at one point, well, I know, I don't need to worry about my retirement, or anything that happens to me, because I've lived my life on the edge, and so I thought I'd just go to India and live on the street, and just like people bring you rice, they feed you or something like that. I just thought, I was in a relationship at the time, and I thought, well, when it ends, I'll do that for the rest of my life. I'll just live, And I did think about spiders and snakes and shit. Okay, apart from the spiders.
Did you go to India?
No, I did not. I just thought, what the fuck why am I thinking that? But just I guess, and then that's the Kundalini stuff. Well, that's when the second Kundalini awakening happened, and I thought, yeah, well, I know, no, I'm not doing that. No, because you're not, you could do that happily for a while, for sure, I think, and make friends with the big spiders and, in the cave, when you hear stories of spiritual teachers who do that, don't they? They say, oh, every morning I wake up and this big spider comes and sits beside me, and, there's a kind of, I don't know, I talk about I'm phobic. Just be phobic, so
So what, the bliss wore off enough that you decided?
Not the bliss, it was the Kundalini. So when the second Kundalini awakening happened, I realised that the way my mind was working was totally distorted. And then I realised, so I could see the consequences, not of living in India, but why I was thinking like that in the first place, and that I realised how, just that I realised I was still part doormat, there was still that going on, so I didn't know what equality looked like. I didn't know what fairness looked like. Not exactly, it was a bit, fairness looks like this. Now fairness looks like that. A bit more like that, rather than, sort of, it's not an absolute, is it? It's but I don't know. I guess because that stuff, the energetic stuff, I don't know, Jen, if you, it flags up the psychological, or not for you.
What do you mean,
Energetic experiences, more, or would repressed memories not mean anything to you, or?
Yeah, but it's purely
It's felt,
physical.
okay, so it's a bodily memory, it's,
Yeah.
okay, non-cognitive.
sometimes it takes me a while to remember what it is, like,
Okay.
especially if something's like traditionally triggered me into a negative memory from the past. I'll just be like really mean to Bob for a few hours because I can't figure out what it is, because my body's just in I guess anger and stress and kind of flight and fight.
Okay.
So it takes a while for me to like breathe through it, and then I'll kind of feel what that memory is in my body.
Okay, and then you can articulate. Okay. Yeah.
But then when you were saying, like, when you talk about self, is self like the mind self, or the physical self, or the...
Both.
It's both.
Yeah, so there's no ownership of either. I mean, initially the first thing I saw through was the mind before, or the first thing I noticed, although the body I think had gone by that stage, was not gone, it didn't go anywhere, like it was never there, but like, was just I suddenly heard my thoughts, and I thought, well, that's not me, what is it? And then I thought, well, everybody must know that they're not their thoughts, why have I been so stupid? Like, and then I was aware, like, I was just walking around my flat and I was aware, like, no sense of any physicality whatsoever. It was just gone, and I didn't know how to articulate that. Yeah, so it's both. It's because the boundary is gone. Although I have heard some people say about one or two about sense of location coming back. So I don't know if that's a thing. It certainly hasn't happened here. I don't know what that would be like, because I sort of, for me, I equate sense of location with, identified as an ego. Like, I can't see, like, because that would seem like you've had a glimpse somehow, like maybe a profound glimpse, but somehow there's been a re-identification or something. I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong, who knows.
But those two elements of self come together during, like, an awakening or this point for people with, like, it becomes one rather than two separate.
What do you mean?
Like, so if you've got, like, a thought of yourself, or you can think while your body's moving, right? Can you do that? Yeah, you can think and walk, say.
Yeah.
But when you have, like, an awakening, or you're in bliss point, or, like, immediately after, while you're still kind of fuzzy, do they come together? Like, is there a joining? Like, the kind of silences the mind? Do you know what I mean?
Well, not everybody's mind falls away. It's just like it's not owned. So the sense of location is gone and the mind isn't owned. None of it's owned. So it's, initially I had no mind. And then the mind comes and goes now. But it was... So I get to a certain extent what you say about no reflecting, because there's nothing reflecting here, but there's something reacting to things and responding kind of as if that was going on anyway, like to a certain extent, even if slightly wrongly at times, but it is, it just feels like a kind of, I don't know, experience like that, like not even a mist, not even that, like it doesn't,
I get what you mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like spirit, like, and that's, I suppose, as well, because there's nothing happening, and yet there's this, even that, but it's not real, but it's not unreal. It is the reality as it always was, but it's you're not in it. It's less than a computer game. Like it's not even a simulation. Like it's just a zero nothing.
Like there's an energy, but there's not any ownership of it. It's just something like
that's there and not there. That's known to be there and not there, and can't be explained. And can kind of be seen as there and not there. Certainly initially it seemed like it could be seen that way, there and not there, and then known.
So Don, you've mentioned that you're a second Kundalini awakening sort. Do you feel that there's some kind of evolving going on Is evolution a thing?
I think there is with Kundalini, like if you call psychological stuff evolution in terms of that, and that relates with it to the Yvonne Casson sees it all as one thing, so I agree with that. NDEs and the same energy of awakening, but something when there's a Kundalini awakening or NDE or something like any of those energetic experiences, it seems like they seem to generate an impulse towards growth, an accelerated impulse.
So after your second awakening, you became aware of stuff that you weren't aware of before. Okay. So there could be a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth, and a seventh, blah blah blah, ad infinitum. The evolution is open ended.
Well, maybe, but it's very slow down. I mean, there's no. I get like so many people. I get ahas, but they're not so big as when that initial second Kundalini awakening happened. So it's not like massive. I mean, you sort of think of anyone. I don't know. I sort of think of Nietzsche's title, "Human, all too human." You sort of think even the best of them are human. Like no one, anyone who says they're evolved, and you get to know them, you sort of think,
so
"Oh my God."
We were talking earlier about people who decide not to die till next Tuesday because they've got something they want to do first. When will you know when the evolution's over? When will you know when you've hit the end point? Or is there an end point?
Well, you don't, I mean, the thought of an end point doesn't exist anymore, like, it doesn't not exist, it's unknowable. I mean, that's the thing, so I suppose a lot of people who have the non-dual seeing, who haven't had the Kundalini or anything else go on, they see that as uninteresting because because it sounds uninteresting, like reading a storybook.
No, I get that. That's another question. Yeah.
Yeah, or ever.
Yeah.
And when does it end?
Yeah.
And really, like.
Yeah, the question means nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't really believe in an evolved being either. I don't really believe that there's, like, Ramana Maharshi was in any way, someone like that who's so much myth around, like.
Kind of words get in the way, don't they? They're a bit redundant.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe, but I'd like to have been a fly on the wall. Okay, I think of Ramana Maharshi, I think of him getting angry in his restaurant and reading his comic books, and I don't know, I just wonder, what's the truth of that? Like, what was the truth of these just because and if you live in a holy mountain where all you got to do is sit and people bring you food, like, I don't know. I know he had a profound awakening, it must have been, and it was 16, wasn't it? And his dad and his uncle died, and so he lay on the floor apparently, wasn't it, and wanted to see, sort of emulating that, sort of, I don't know if he wanted to be dead or not, and there's suddenly this big awakening, and he lived in Arunachala, the mountain, holy mountain, for like, I think it was like 20 years or something, and there's myths of like rats nibbling his knees. No, he was like, so he was so blissed out. All the pictures of him in samadhi states, which is another thing that not everybody gets. Samadhi states are different states of absorption, and there's different names for them in different schools of thought. So Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I think that's complete awakening. And, I don't know, some of the others, but it would be seen as unimportant. Do you want rats nibbling your knees, whether you care about it or not? I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no getting away from the fact that it's still a human body mind, at the same time as whatever else it, whatever other states it's occupying also, but it's still a human body mind, whether it's inactive in that moment and just sitting, breathing and meditating or whatever. But I think that doesn't really change, right? So if you just sit and be inactive, then good for you, great.
But I think you could. I do think you could go back. Like, I was just sort of thinking about it because the time, if you are spending time doing nothing, it suddenly seems actually that'd be quite nice just to spend the rest of your life doing nothing. And very easy and easier the more you do it, because the more you sink into that, the more absorbed, and it's kind of like, well, why all this activity, because it's because it's kind of pointless and it's quite stressful as well. You know.
Yeah.
Because I thought, you know, like normally in the train I would busy myself with something, you know, and then when I don't, it's just that absorption, or on the tube, like just that, because there's nothing to do, right? That's, you can fall back into that.
Yeah. Yeah, when we were talking about the evolution, I got a picture of I don't know. I guess that I'm gonna paint it as the body mind is the small self, and then the big self with a little s, and then there's the capital S self, which is the great oneness, everything, and those are the three elements of me. But evolution only really happens at the level of the body mind, you know. So I guess, you know, I've lived my entire life as a house, and then, you know, I go around inside the house and I make improvements and whatever. And so now here comes the great realization where I zoom out to the full expanse of the universe, and if I look down, I see planet Earth, and I see it, England, and I see this little house, and that's Bob and his body mind. And the evolution that we were speaking of, I think I saw as being, it's still just new coats of paint going on the rooms inside that little house, no matter what. That's the extent of the process that we were talking about as being the evolution of the human, that's having a second and a third layer of kind of attunement, when really there is no attunement beyond the full expanse that was there at the point of realisation of the original waking up. So there's kind of nowhere to go from here, you know. It's, and I'm not trying to belittle it, but just to give perspective on it, you know.
No, because I mean, it was also interesting what Jen was saying earlier about, you might have a feeling that's unsettling, you take it out in Bob, and then at some other point you can understand what it's about. So you've gone up a notch, something's fallen away and something has been added as well, you know?
Yeah.
Something's gone, but something else has come, something healthier if you want, or freer has, you know, a bubble has popped and it's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like with that whole evolution talk thing, like for me, the feeling that I get is there is absolutely, like I know probably you were just saying like there isn't more, it is just what it is, but for me, the more would be that nervous system connection, that kind of not having to say anything and standing next to a plant and knowing what it needs, standing next to a human, standing next to an animal. Because I don't get that. Well, I get it with people, but like when I'm at Bliss Point, I can, or I feel like I can access it through other things. Like, and to me, that feels like almost an evolution of the whatever this thing is, you know.
It feels like it's a journey towards more authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not having words, you know, because what the fuck is words?
Yeah.
Like just having, whether this is feeling it or whether I'm over there or whatever it is that gives me a feeling, being able to like look at that plant and just know what it needs without touching it, without like just that. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just to be able to walk around the world and none of us need to talk. We just are. We just be, and we just. Or we're not. That to me would be bliss.
I think at that point though, so that like say an NDE at that point, there is nothing that needs everything, and anything is, and that there is no need to communicate. The communication is telepathic, right? Like it is in a lucid. I don't know if it's not like that in every lucid dream, but a lucid dream seems to be a foretaste of that, because you can communicate and you can know what you want, and it's all done thoughtless and it's all done wordless, like my experience of it anyway, like, but it's only on this realm. I think you get close to that. I mean, what the plant doesn't, do you know, like, it's if you're evolved, and like, I guess because it's a projection of mind, like, how can you get to that point where you're evolved and nothing else, it's seen that then nothing needs anything at that at a certain level. And I think when you wake, you realise that everything's okay, but it's like there's a relative as well. But I think that, you know, certain instances, like I think Renata McNay talked about that in her awakening, you know, seeing someone in a doorstep in a really bad way, but she just, you know, I don't know if she smiled about it, but she kind of walked on because she saw that okayness, because that's part of this as well on one level. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, because it is an evolution. I think there's points in time where that's stronger. Like, around my awakening, just before it kicked off, I thought it seemed to me I could read the history of everyone. Not everyone in the whole world, everyone I met. I could see everything that ever happened to them and know everything about them and what kind of person, all that kind of stuff. But that seemed to calm down. And is it an evolution, or does it go, you know, I don't know. Then it seems you kind of get back into that idea of becoming, but at the same time what you say is true, maybe true as well. I don't know, because maybe there is an evolution to that as well, like in the story.
Because what you said makes sense too, that it's interchangeable, but then I don't know, I always talk about plants and I know I go on about them, but to me there's something about being able to not speak to a plant, but being able to just feel something like that feels, I don't want to say it just feels different. It feels like there is nothing, like I am nothing. Like just being like, I don't know, like if you take acid or something, like if you look at a piece of meat and look at an orange, the orange is going to be fizzing and alive, the piece of meat is going to be dead and you're not going to want to touch it, you know, because that raises you, and it's like that feeling but all the time, and it's kind of like no feeling at all, but just a connection with things that aren't fussy. I can't use words, but like, yeah, just pure energy, basically. Being able to communicate with pure energy, but without needing to say anything. Just an acceptance of, oh, we're kind of around in the same vicinity. Moving on.
It could evolve. Like, I mean, I think maybe Tim Freak would go on with it. I don't know whether he would or not, but
don't know if it's a good thing or not, but
well, if there was, I mean, if this was in time some sort of evolution, and the soul is now being able to survive, you know, the body in this story of time. Of course, none of this happened. You know, well, why wouldn't it? I don't know. Maybe it would just become all spirit. I don't know. I'm talking off the top of my head, but maybe you have more experience. Like I think seeing the most, I've never communicated with plants around, but they've certainly seen the life force around them, and really thick, and they seem, I don't know, like powerful beings almost, like, and I've heard people in NDEs talk about that, like they're sentinels, like they're real, it's like angels or something.
Yeah, that's what it is then, because to me that's like a tree is like, I'm jealous of them, like, you know what I mean, like the energy, they're grounded, like the veins through their leaves, like that is what I want to be.
Well, maybe in terms of wakefulness, if you were including plant and animal life, there would be a sense that they're more awake than anything, maybe.
I think maybe that's what I'm getting at. Like that to me is evolution.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking earlier about the way you communicate
with
patients and things, and that's how trees communicate.
Yeah.
Trees communicate with every other tree in the forest.
Yeah. And if someone's cutting the grass, right, the next field will like.
They know.
They know.
Yeah, they know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they heal each other.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't you?
I mean, I think everyone can, whether you're in bliss, whether you're awake or not. It's just that we've forgotten. That to me would be my evolution, I suppose, if there was one. But then,
you'd be a tree.
well, just be conscious, just be like them, not have to do, not have to eat, not have to. Well, I mean, but
would you like not to have to eat and not?
Yeah, to not have to do anything but just look around
I mean,
and
look,
smile and
it's
not have
the
to move
ultimate
and just get
message of
nourishment.
existence, isn't it?
They just go on with it, don't they?
Just get on with it.
Yeah, no, but then you're in a tree, like in a wood with an axe, like, I mean,
Yeah, but that's evolution too.
Yeah.
yeah, I know. It may be, but that's seen from an objective perspective, and maybe the tree is like, I don't know, you're going to cut down. I don't know, maybe they have empathy, I don't know, like,
I think they do, for sure.
well then they don't want the other tree to be cut down by the mad axeman. I don't know, like, that's
But if we were all trees, no one would be an axeman. That's
true.
what I'm getting at. Like, everyone was the same. It's not just me that's the tree.
So now it's just the humans are the problem. Come.
I'm opening up a circle.
Right, okay.
I feel like
I
I'm
wasn't sitting in the right place.
It's gone so off non-duality,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know where it is, but maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There we are.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I was just intrigued by the evolution chat. I think I've gone sideways.
I do and I do not think that evolution, like it in a sense it seems like that becoming, this is the end of evolution or caring about that, and then there's a part of me thinks in this early time there may well be, so that's the part of me that's really intrigued by Tim Freak's work and thinks there may be something, yeah, I mean, and also it's all unknowable, like it really is.
Yeah, I suppose it wouldn't go into the non-dual stuff really at all, would it? Because there's no process and there's no
It's,
future either, really. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, you're telling a story. I mean, you can just say that. It's just a story. There's no one, yeah, endlessly repeat on that. But then, even if you do that in the front of a room, you're going to go home to your partner and your friends, and it's likely you're going to have a conversation kind of like this, right?
Yeah.
That's because that's what people do. Although seekers don't think that. They think that you go home and I don't know, just stay in bliss all day or whatever it is, I suppose. Which